Hey, Larken Rose here, and the topic of the video today is religion and anarchism, and do they go together? And I routinely see people saying that, like, religion is completely incompatible with anarchism, and they're totally wrong. And I'm going to get into why. Now, religions totally can be authoritarian control freak BS. Now, I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of, in fact, I'm going to get into basically zero scripture of any religion to argue over that because I don't care. But to lay some groundwork, let me just say, if you do evil crap because some guy told you to, and you say, I'm just following orders, I'm just doing my job, you're a piece of crap. You don't get to blame it on somebody else. You chose to follow orders. You chose to do what somebody else told you. It's on you. You are 100% responsible for your actions. For the exact same reason, if you look at a book or a whatever and you say, this is my religion, and you go off and you do evil stuff and you're blaming it on your religion, you're a coward and you're a liar and you're a piece of crap. What you do, what you choose to do, that's your choice. You're responsible for it. And saying, well, this book told me to do it or the church told me to do it. No, you did it. You chose it of your own free will. And whether or not you believed God told you to makes no stinking difference. Whatever created you, whatever created me, gave you free will and the ability to choose. And if you choose to do evil, that's on you. Having said that, it's interesting to me, and I've mentioned this before, how many people, I'll just say it this way, I think are better than their religions tell them to be. Because people can, I'll start with Christianity because that's what I grew up surrounded by. So I know way more about that than I know about other religions. There is a huge range of personalities and behavioral choices and stuff that self-described Christians demonstrate. It can be anything from somebody who's open and generous and compassionate and helps his fellow man and is nice to somebody who's just a judgmental, power-happy jerk. And if all sorts of different people across that spectrum call themselves Christian, it no longer means anything at all to me if somebody says, I'm a Christian. That is exactly as true if somebody tells me I'm Jewish, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm a whatever the heck else. What somebody chooses to get out of a religion and how they choose to behave, again, is on them. There are lots of things in Christianity that you could point to different things. You know, you have the Old Testament fire and brimstone mayhem, and then you have Jesus saying, be nice to people, even be nice to sinners, even love your enemies, turn the other cheek, all that stuff. And then you have like Deuteronomy, which is like, if anybody believes in something you don't, go murder them. And you have to murder them first, and then everyone in your family should murder them, and murder, 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 and murder. So when somebody read the books, and I know a lot of Christians will say, well, that's the Old Testament. That's not for us. That's not a description of what we're supposed to do. Okay, I'm really glad that you think that and that you're not out murdering anybody who disagrees. I'm not going to argue about whether that is the correct translation of the scriptures, because to me it doesn't matter. Like, I don't believe that's the word of God. I don't believe any of these books are the word of God. At the same time, I do believe there are lots of profound moral truths contained in a whole bunch of different books, whether you're talking about the Bible or Lord of the Rings, like whether it's religious texts or just all sorts of things. But in the past, obviously, Christianity, under the guise of Christianity, you had like crusades and inquisitions and stuff, where people were like tortured and murdered and stuff in the name of, you better believe in this pacifist named Jesus Christ, which is completely bonkers and completely evil. Now, I think pretty much any modern Christian is going to say, well, that's not in line with what Christianity really is. I'm not here to argue at all what any religion really is. In fact, I would suggest that there isn't even a way to say what it really is if there's just giant spectrum of different interpretations and different behavioral choices and how people treat other people within the category of people who call themselves Christian or Muslims or Jewish or whatever else. And so when somebody gets, I don't even like to use the word spiritual because a lot of people, like, the meaning of that is sort of vague and fluffy and mean to and fluffy and general to a lot of people. But when somebody like perceives and gets moral truth out of some book, out of some teaching from some church, whatever, good. Like, I think a ton of what came from the things that Jesus is having quoted as having said, there is lots of wisdom and goodness in there, regardless of whether Jesus even existed at all as a person, or if that depiction of him was at all accurate. Or if he was the Son of God. Like, again, the scriptural thing of what people believe, to me, I don't care. I don't care what you believe. I care how you treat other people. Now, if you look historically, like, most Christians today are not behaving like most self-described Christians today are not behaving the way a whole lot of self-described Christians behaved, say, in the Crusades and in the Spanish Inquisition and stuff. So the fact that the label was stuck on both doesn't mean they have anything in common. So some person who's, nice and sharing and like they identify as Christian and they have their faith and they have their beliefs and they choose to be a decent person, and to them, their faith helps them to be a nice, caring person to other people. Part of me doesn't at all care whether I agree with this is going to sound insulting, the mythology part of their belief of like his, God's son came to earth, and like whether or not you believe that and whether or not that's true, what I care about first and foremost is how do you treat other people? And of course, the most fundamental question is, do you acknowledge and respect the self-ownership of every human being? Or do you violently try to impose your will? Now, a lot of people who are now complaining about like anarchism can't match with any religion because it's all authoritarian, they don't seem to notice that more and more there are anti-authoritarian religious people. And a lot of those people say, well, I'm not religious, I'm more spiritual, and I'm not going to bicker about the different terminologies. I've mentioned this before, that when somebody says that they're religious, whether it's Christian or anything else, what I usually ask is, okay, this God that you believe in, whatever name he has in your religion, whatever name you're using, do you view him as an entity that says, do what I say or I'm going to kick you, like if you sin, you will be punished? Or, in other words, authoritarianism. He gives a command and you obey it or you get punished. Or do you view him as a source of love and wisdom and guidance, where it's basically saying, if you want to be a happy, fulfilled human being, do these things, because if you sin, if you miss the mark, if you wander off of what human beings are supposed to do, it's not going to end well for you. You're going to have problems. You're going to be miserable. You're going to have problems with other people and so on and so forth. And I have seen a very clear pattern just in my lifetime of people drifting away from the authoritarian view of God as he makes up commands and kicks you if you disobey, to a God that is trying to guide people and tell them how to be truly happy. And so even though the authoritarian ones will call themselves Christians or whatever else, and the completely anti-authoritarians will call themselves Christians, to me that is a monumentally huge difference If you think something is, a deity is just bossing around and kicking you for disobeying, in other words, treating you like a trained dog, and if you hit you on the nose with a rolled up newspaper if you don't obey, that's a very different thing than feeling sort of in touch with the underlying power of the universe, however you want to describe that, trying to guide you in the direction of how humanity is supposed to be. Those are completely different, and both of those absolutely get stuck under the label of Christian. They also get stuck under the label of Judaism, and a bunch of other terms. Now, right now, in this day and age, there aren't a whole lot of Christians who think it's okay to violently force other people to go along with whatever rules they believe God said. Like, don't eat this, don't work on this day, don't eat these particular kinds of food. Mostly Christians are of the live and let live mentality. And that includes if they say you're a sinner or you're horrible, you're going to hell. Which, I can sort of object to that. But unless they're threatening to throw you in hell themselves, which I don't think they pretend to have the ability to do, their predictions and their hopes, that's not violence, that's just whatever. You can hope or guess what's going to happen to me all you want. But if you're not going to initiate violence against me for not doing something that fits within however your rules, however you interpret the rules about how you're supposed to obey, okay, peaceful coexistence is totally possible, and you don't need to be a statist and you don't need to be an authoritarian. Now, again, they can totally say that I'm evil because of whatever and that they think I'm going to go to hell. That's fine. That's not aggression. They can be as judgmental as they want. They can condemn me in any way they want, or condemn anybody else the way they want. For example, if somebody says, well, if you're a homosexual, you're going to burn in hell. Now, I can say, or other people can say, well, I think you're kind of a jerk for thinking that, but just thinking that isn't an act of violence. It's an act of being a jerk, maybe, whatever. But that's not violence, so that doesn't have to be statism. Being judgmental and critical of other people, whether it's justified or not, objectively speaking, that's not aggression within the non-aggression principle. So mostly today, Christians are live and let live variety, even if some of them are judgmental, and a lot of them very much aren't. A lot of them are like, here's my beliefs, you don't have to share my faith. I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to shun you or tell you you're going to hell. I'm just going to try to live my life based on the guidance that I feel is the language of the universe, the creator of the universe telling me how I should be, however they want to describe it. Now, there are still some religions, particularly on the other side of the world, where some people are absolutely in the mentality that these arbitrary rules that my book says you're both supposed to abide by, if you don't do this, then I feel justified stoning you to death. Again, I'm going to revert to the thing of don't blame a book for the evil shit you do. If you murder someone or try to murder someone for not believing as you do, or for even making fun of your religion or saying things about some prophet, you are a piece of shit. You're an idiotic, violent, savage animal blaming your own evil on a religion. Only, no, you chose it. You are the one choosing to do that. So not only are you an evil piece of shit, you're also a fucking coward. Because instead of just saying, I'm just doing this on my own, you're saying, this book has told me to go fuck yourself. You can't even take on the responsibility to say, well, I've decided I'm going to kill anybody who does whatever arbitrary thing I decide you're not supposed to do. So it's the cowardice of deferring the responsibility to a book, which is the exact same cowardice as the mindless thugs of militaries who well, I blew up that village because the guy above me told me to. I don't know who was there. Probably killed a bunch of innocent people, but you can't blame me. I was just doing as I was told. Well, I killed all these people, but my book told me to. You did it. You chose to do it. So now there's a whole other category here, because people are so stuck in the group mentality thing and so bad at thinking in terms of individuals that a lot of people will say Christians are like this. Like, Christians are like a whole lot of things. Some of them very nice and generous and kind. Some of them judgmental buttheads. Some of them all the way violent. And when people say, like, there's one twit who keeps commenting under my video, when are you going to do a video about Islam? People who are Muslims have the same thing. First of all, I think there's like 1.3 or 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. If everyone who is a Muslim believes in murdering anybody who isn't, you'd be dead. So would I. Like, that's a lot of people. If they all really believed and acted on the let's kill anybody who doesn't believe as I do, like, you'd know the outcome would not be what we see today. Now, again, I'm not even here to argue about like whether their book actually says to do that. By the way, Deuteronomy in the Bible absolutely says to do that. Deuteronomy, I think 13, read that chapter. It's demented psychosis. And a lot of Christians will say, well, that's the Old Testament. That's not really telling us how to behave. Whatever. So the people who identify as Muslim, who live and let live, and there are some, and there's a huge number of them, it necessarily has to be the majority of them, or there would just be constant bloodshed all over the place. I have no problem with them, and I don't care about their beliefs, and I'm not going to blame Islam, which would include them, for things that they don't do and they don't condone and they're opposed to. Now, are there some people who are still violent, power-happy psychos and blame it on their belief in Islam? Absolutely. And they do a bunch of violent, psychotic crap, especially on the other side of the world. Now, do they get a pass because their religion said to? No. They are personally responsible individually for what they do. And when people like look at here's the Quran and it tells them to do this. No, it tells them to do that. Well, that means this, that means that. Again, I don't give a crap about any of that. I care about how the actual individuals in those religions treat other people. Some of them, some self-described Muslims, are violent fucking psychopaths. They violently attack people who didn't commit force or fraud against anybody else. They, as individuals, should be condemned. If you blame Islam for that, all 1.3 billion, 1.6 billion, whichever one it is, I forget, you're blaming a hell of a lot of people who don't do that, which makes you a pack mentality idiot. It's the same thing. In fact, if we don't mind like generalizing over space and area in different countries, how about we generalize over time too? And start calling Christians like murderous psychos for the Crusades and Inquisition, because it was self-described Christians who did a lot of that. Are you going to blame like American Christians who didn't do that and would never do that and would oppose that and would think, no, what the hell? Because that would be stupid. Well, even if it's the same time period, if there's millions of Muslims over here who are like nice and kind and charitable and do the live and let live thing, and you're going to lump them in with ones over here that also say that they're followers of Islam and they do violent psychotic crap, that's just you being a pack mentality moron. So to blame Islam is just as dumb as blaming Christianity. Blame or credit individuals for what individuals choose to do. And if they point at a book and say, well, this book told me to, okay, you're a cowardly, evil piece of shit. If you're doing evil stuff and blaming it on a book, you're a piece of crap And you're a coward because you won't even take responsibility that you chose to do that. And when people don't think in terms of individuals, they, like, their whole perception, it's like, well, I like this group and I don't like that group. It gets so ridiculously mangled. Like, people can rightly point out that, there are unjust regimes over in the Middle East, like Saddam Hussein was a power-happy psycho. Now, it wasn't nearly as powerful a power-happy psycho as the people running the U.S. military. And as far as murdering innocent people over on the other side of the world in the Middle East, it would be really hard for anybody, including the most militant, like Muslim extremists, whatever subcategories of that you want to point to, it would be tough for them to compete with what the U.S. military did as far as murdering innocent people in Iraq and Afghanistan and all over the place, Syria. And the list goes on, sadly. So are you really going to pretend, well, we should be scared of the Muslims? How about the Christians, the people who called themselves Christians, who donned a uniform for the U.S. government and went to the other side of the world and murdered innocent people? Are you going to blame Christians for that? Are you going to blame Americans for that? Don't blame me for that. Not only did I not do it, I was condemning it the whole damn time, the same way I would condemn it if someone who identifies as Muslim is committing violence against people who aren't committing force or fraud against anybody. So when people think in terms of these pacts in religions, not only are they failing to actually identify the right and wrong that matter, that have nothing to do with what label somebody chooses to wear, but they come out with these warped things like America is the good guy. Like, what's this America thing? There's this big place with a ton of people on it, most of whom aren't committing violence against anybody, most of whom aren't leaving the country to go to the other side of the world. Some of them are, because they're joining up and they're volunteering to be armed thugs for the ruling class. And so, it's so frustrating, because people look at the Gaza Strip, what's happening with the Israeli government. I don't blame the people of Israel, because just like the people of U.S., lots of them are trying to just live their lives. And lots of them are supporting authoritarian lunacy. And the fact that they live in Israel isn't the defining factor of which one of those they are. So I don't want to be blamed for what the U.S. military does, and I'm not going to blame some random person I don't know in Israel for what the ruling class does there. The military of Israel is a terrorist organization. The military of the United States is a terrorist organization. Some people fighting against that are also terrorist organizations, because they are all willing to victimize and terrorize and murder innocent people to serve their political agendas. If you do that, you're an evil piece of shit. And I don't care what flag you fly. And I don't care what your excuse is. Well, the other side, shut the fuck up. If you're intentionally harming and killing innocent people, you're an evil piece of shit. You are what is wrong with the world. Yeah, but the other side, no, dumbass. The only us versus them that matters is the people who are willing to live in peace, the people who actually abide by live and let live, versus the people who don't. And the military, every military, fails to abide by that. Every military is full of people who are aggressors and evil thugs. And the fact that they may be fighting against other aggressors and evil thugs doesn't change that fact. And to watch big groups pick sides between two sets of terrorists, and you can say, well, this was in response to something way, like, they kill way more innocents than they do. Okay, so how many innocents are you okay with murdering in response to somebody else killing innocents? If that number is above 0, you suck. You're the problem. But this is, to me, this is the biggest problem with religion, is not even how the beliefs affect the individual. It's how individuals start to think in terms of collectives. Like, we have to defend Christians, and no, we have to defend Muslims, and you've done this to Muslims. Nobody did anything to everybody called Muslims. Nobody did anything to everybody called Christians. Nobody did anything to everybody called Jews. And when you think in terms of the categories, and you decide that let's lash out at that category because that category did something to our category, you're just one more gullible, immoral, unprincipled, hypocritical pawn for the worst people in the world. Don't blame that on your religion. That's you. That's your individual responsibility. You did that. You are a cheerleader for evil. Or if you joined up and are acting as a thug for one of these ruling classes, you are a direct agent of evil. That's you. And pointing out that somebody else is doing evil in a different direction, how do you think that makes any difference to what you choose to do, to who you choose to harm or terrorize or kill? And so there are so many different things that sort of fall under the umbrella of religion that people find a way to find goodness in, to bring goodness out of. Like I read I read the Bible and it tells me to be a good person and blah, blah, blah. I read the Torah, which is basically a chunk of the Bible, and it tells me to do this and this and this and this. Well, I read the Quran and I interpret it as telling me to be nice and generous and good. Like I could read freaking Lord of the Rings and get that too. Now I don't call that a religion, and you can call yours a religion and have your beliefs about God or the afterlife or whatever else. But if your behavior and your perceptions are warped by what you decide you have to do because your religion says it, that is an act of cowardice and irresponsibility. You have free will. You have the ability to choose. You have the ability to decide to do something or to not do something. And if you do something that your conscience tells you is evil, but the book said I have to, you cowardly piece of crap. But if you look at a book, any book, a church, a teaching, and from that you find reasons to be a better person, to be nicer to other people, to defend the innocent, and to be generous to your fellow man, cool. I don't care what label you put on that. I don't care what book you even believe in, if that's how you behave as an individual. And so to get back to the whole thing of when people say you can't be an anarchist and be religious, that's not at all true. Because I know a lot of Christian anarchists who don't at all want their beliefs forced on other people. Like you have to do this, you're not allowed to work on the Sabbath, or whatever degree of rules they try to live by or they take literally or anything like that. And so even among anarchists, and I'll end on this, even among anarchists, there's the pack mentality thing of saying, if you're religious, or if you're Christian, or if you're whatever, you can't be a real anarchist. Except lots of them are, because they don't view their religious beliefs as an excuse to commit violence against others. They view their religious belief as guidance for themselves for how to be better human beings and help their fellow man. And so that's why I say I think a lot of people are better than their religions tell them to be. Because if you want to pick and choose in the Torah, in the Quran, in the Bible, in the whatever else you want to look in, you can find excuses to be a judgmental, power-happy, violent jerk. And you can find reasons to be actually tolerant. I don't mean you approve of everything and agree with everything. I mean you tolerate other things, as in you don't initiate violence to stamp out anybody who believes differently or behaves differently. And you tolerate anybody who isn't committing force or fraud against other people, even if you think their behaviors aren't good for them, even if you think it's bad for society overall. You understand that people have to choose the right thing to be good people. You can't force somebody to be a genuinely good person by forcing them to make the right decisions against their will. So anyway, that was most of what I wanted to babble about. And it's so frustrating to see pack mentality get its tentacles into so many different things, even among anarchists who are like, you can't believe in God and still be an anarchist. Yeah, they can. I don't believe in their God, and I'm an anarchist, but I recognize, hey, if they're going to leave me alone, what their teachings tell them about how they should behave, as long as it doesn't include, go commit violence against other people, I'm fine with it. I don't care. So it's just the lesson of tolerance. And I think one of the reasons that the teachings of Jesus Christ, again, whether you think he was the Son of God, whether you think he even existed, whether you think that's at all an accurate account of what he said, if he did exist, the teachings that have been passed down and have resonated with so many people, I think they did because it is very much a glimpse, a lot of it, into what human beings are supposed to be, which is don't be at war with everybody. Don't violently attack anybody who's a little bit different than you. Try to love everybody. And it's kind of sad that even from a book about a guy who taught that, people will still fall into the violent pack mentality routine. But not everybody. And it's fewer and fewer people who do that. And so will I condemn religious people who do evil stuff? Yeah, you're choosing to do evil stuff. Are there a lot of people doing evil crap in the name of Islam? Yeah. Is it the majority? No. If it was, there'd be 1 billion murders a day. You'd probably notice that because there's well over 1 billion Muslims. So I wish people were more precise in how they think about things and who they condemn and why. Instead of this category versus that category. Individuals. If an individual chooses to harm innocents, he sucks. He should be condemned. He should be stopped. Whatever he blamed it on, whether it was, well, I was just following orders from the guy with the rank above me, or, well, my book told me to do this. No. You should be judged for what you do. And there are no excuses. Don't hide behind a god. Don't hide behind a book. Don't hide behind a military. Don't hide behind anything. You are responsible for what you do. Why is that so difficult for so much of humanity to comprehend?